Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing my spooky October wrap up. Before I get into the books I've read, I'll first say something that might be of interest to people. I went to IKEA only a few hours ago and I bought myself some more shelves. So this is the last time you'll see these shelves looking exactly like this. I'm going from 6 shelves to 8. So it'll be a more efficient use of the actual shelves. There won't be such enormous gaps above each book. It's going to be fun doing it as well because I've got to move hundreds upon hundreds of books around, which is always fun. And another little side note is the reason for spooky in the title is to do with the Spooky Reads Challenge, which is a styled idea from the BookTube Reading Buddies Goodreads group. I will link the various things in the description below, of course. So without further ado, I'll get onto the books I've read. And there's quite a few of them. I've had a good month. The first book, I don't have a physical copy to show you. I've read it on my Kindle, which I downloaded for free as well, which is always handy. And that is Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I really liked it. The start was a bit slow, I would have to say, but it was a good story, and I'm really glad I read it. Obviously now I know all these sort of ideas behind the whole split personality thing, which obviously lots of modern films and other books and such use. I'm really glad I read it. The second book I read this month is one of the finished actually, and that is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. This is the SF Masterworks edition, as I've got loads of them. And it's a really good book. I love this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And it's just really fun. It's one man, Robert Neville. In the movie, he's played by Will Smith, and he's the apparent last man on Earth in New York, and he can go out in the day, scavenge for supplies, and then he's got to be home and barricaded at night because that's when the vampires come out and attempt to call to him and want him to come out so they can drink his blood and rip his head off, presumably. As you do. I really liked this. The writing was brilliant, and the weird sort of psychological development of the main character was really interesting and just a brilliant book. The third book I read this month was The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. This was on Kindle again, so I've got nothing interesting to show you. And this is a short story collection. There are 12 stories, I think, or could be 13, I can't remember now. And the first 5, I think it is, are related to this King in Yellow, which is this weird and really corrupting play that is not the main theme of any of them as such, but it's a unpleasant influence in the first half of the stories, and I really enjoyed the first half of them. The second half were kind of Art Nouveau in France, and they were just weird and a bit slow, to be honest. On Goodreads I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I did enjoy it, but the second half of the short stories let it down. So if you do read it, certainly put priority on the first half of the book, quite simply. Fourth book I read this month is one that Chris is definitely going to be happy that I've read, and that is The Shining by Stephen King. Now this copy is the same edition as my Dark Tower series, so it's a really nice copy, I think. And the book itself I gave 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads without doubt. This is 5 out of 5 stars. Brilliant book. The build up and the tension throughout it is genius. I mean, truly brilliant. And this is actually, to some people's possible amazement, is the first ever full Stephen King novel I've read. I've got all his short novel collections and I love them all, but years ago I tried to read Pet Sematary and I hated it, and that was like 10 years ago, and I haven't read a full Stephen King since, and now I have. So I love this book. The characters are brilliant, and the setting, of course, being the Overlook Hotel, just works wonders. I haven't seen the film, but I do plan to quite soon. The fifth book I read this month is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Now this is a dark fantasy book It's quite thin. And weirdly enough, the other 4 Neil Gaimans I've read this year, I've actually enjoyed. Did not like this one. This was boring. It was, I don't know, there's something about it that didn't work for me personally. It's a shame because I wanted to like it, obviously being a Neil Gaiman book, but it was bound to happen that there would be a book of his that I wouldn't like, considering I've already liked the previous 4 that I've read. The 6th book I read this month was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Now, this is a really nice looking book, very, very thin. I read this in about 3 hours, so it's extremely fast. It's not even 200 pages. And it's a really good book though. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And it's a really odd book because the main characters have no names. I mean, literally, well, they do obviously have names, but you do not know the names. They are referred to from their positions, and they are on an expedition into this Area X, this sort of weird off-limits area. You don't know where this area is, and it's a really weird psychological book, but I really did enjoy it. The descriptions for the landscape and the environment are amazing. I mean, really impressive, which indeed was why I rated it so highly. They are phenomenal descriptions of the terrain. The next book I read was Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I didn't enjoy this as much as what I thought I might. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads because it was well written, but there was just something slightly off about the book that stopped it from getting 5 out of 5 stars. The start was brilliant and the build-up was really good, but the ending was a bit of a disappointment for me, and I know several other people found this as well. But it's still a brilliant book, really, really good. The next book I read was The Lottery. I read this online, not on my Kindle, and it's a very short story. I liked it, but it was so short that I don't really have much of an opinion either way about it. It was just a very short story that felt very brief and as a result obviously not very developed. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The third from last book I read this month was the only one that wasn't part of the Spooky Read challenge, and I'm really glad I read this one, and that was a free download version from a Kindle of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I am so glad I read this book. Bram Stoker's Dracula is of course one of the all-time classic horrors, obviously, and for good reason. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, although I'm still debating whether I should actually increase it to 5. I really did enjoy the story. The start felt a bit off, but maybe that was just me, but it was really, really good. The characters and, of course, the ideas of Dracula and Van Helsing and obviously Mina Harker and Jonathan Harker was really good, and I'm really glad I read it because, well, the next book certainly uses Dracula as its inspiration. It's actually well known for it. And indeed, the next book is Salems Lot by Stephen King. Stephen King said himself at the start of this that he took inspiration from Dracula and he wanted to do his inspired version. And I loved this book. I gave 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And it's just really, really fun. The build-up and the description of the environment and the characters is good. And the ending as well. I know some people have issues with the ending, I've heard. But I personally liked all this book. Obviously I'm going to go 5 out of 5 stars. So it's just a brilliant book. And finally, the last book is the Necronomicon by H.P. Lovecraft. Now this is one of the physically largest books I own. This is sort of house brick sized. It's 880 pages roughly, and it's hefty to hold. And I mean, this was not an easy book to read. I actually took over a week to read this thing. I was reading each of the short stories because it is indeed a short story collection, a few at a time. It's a really good book, and it's very hit and miss with the stories, of course. Some of them are really good, some of them, yeah, not so much. Some of the significant stories in this were ones like The Call of Cthulhu, which, oddly enough, I've heard about this for, well, forever really, and I didn't particularly enjoy it. The same as The Mountains of Madness. This is also a well-known Lovecraft one, and wasn't as impressed by it as what I thought it might be. Weirdly enough, all the ones I hadn't heard of before, I actually loved them. I really, really enjoyed them. Other ones, yeah, not so much, and they're pretty disappointing actually, some of them. I gave these 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So, that's actually it for all the books I've read in October. This was a brilliant month, not just in terms of the amount I've read. I mean, 11 books is quite a few, but also because they were horror. I'm not a big horror person as such, but I think I might be now. So, Estelle, thank you for organising this. So if you've read any of the books that I've talked about today, please say so in the comments below. I'm always interested to hear. And that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.